So now let's get started with the assembly of our obstacle avoiding robot. So first you are going to take the two parts that will be your chassis for your robot, and you want to note that the part that has these rectangular shaped holes in the middle, that's going to be the top part. So let's put that away for now, because we are going to be working on the bottom part, which will be the base on top of which we will be building our obstacle avoiding robot. So first, as you can see, we have got our base, and first we want to identify the front and the back. So this part here where you see the slits, the little rectangular slits, that part is going to be the front part of your robot, and this part at the back where there are no slits, where it is mostly just holes, that is going to be the back part of your obstacle avoiding robot. So first, to get started, we are going to be placing our spacers, which will later be able to hold our top part in place. So let's get started with putting our spacers in place. You are going to take the longest spacers that you have in your kit, the long spacers, and we are going to be putting them on these 4 holes at the very corners of your body. So it's going to look something like this. But you get the idea, it's going to look something like that. So let's get started with putting them in place. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a small screw like that, and you're going to slip this through underneath so that it comes out of that hole like that. And then you're going to take your spacer and you're going to put it on the screw and just rotate it till it's nice and tightly in place. When you do the same thing again on all the other sides, you're going to take a small screw, slip it in like that, spacer, rotate, that's in place. If you feel your spacer is a little loose, it won't really cause a problem, but if you want, you can always try another spacer. There we go, that's nice and tight. Turn it around, take another small screw, put it through that hole there, take your spacer, like that, and finally take one more screw, put it through this final hole here, take your spacer and screw it in place. And with that, you've got all 4 of your big spacers in place. So now that we've got our 4 big spacers in place, for our next step, we are going to fix our caster wheel. Now as you will notice, we've got a number of holes on our lower part of our chassis, and you will notice 3 holes in a triangular shape right here near the front. Now when you take your caster wheel, which is this, you will also notice that it too has 3 holes in a triangular shape. So for your next step, you are going to fix this caster wheel beneath these 3 holes that you see here, kind of like that. To make this simple, you can always first take a small screw. We are going to be using small screws to hold our caster wheel in place. Slip it through that hole like that, and then align it with your caster wheel like that. So you've got that. Now you want to make sure that all the holes of the caster wheel align with the holes on your chassis. And now take a nut, just put it on your screw like that, hold it in place, take a screwdriver and tighten. And now that you've done that, just align the other 2 holes on the caster wheel with the 2 holes on your chassis and put 2 more screws through it like that, and like that, and just put nuts underneath them as well, and your caster wheel will be in place. So now as you can see, we have screwed our caster wheel in place and our caster wheel is fixed and it's good to go. So next we are going to put our BO motors in place. In our kit, as you will notice, we have got 2 battery operated motors. So now we are going to fix our battery operated motors on our base, and firstly what you want to notice is you will see these rectangular shaped slits over here near the front of your robot. So our battery operated motor, essentially you really want to pay attention to the alignment and the direction in which we are putting this, because otherwise it might cause trouble later on. So what you want to notice is your motor is being kept like this, as in it's going to be between, each motor is going to be between these two slits, this outer slit and this inner slit. You are going to position it like that. And the other thing you want to notice is that you've got two holes on your battery operated motor. So those two holes have to come at the midpoint of the slit, kind of like that. And also your rotor should be sticking outwards, not inside. So now that you've understood that, we are going to take the T holders that you see in your kit. This is to help hold our battery operated motors in place. So what we are going to do is, first, as we noticed before, there is this rectangular shaped slit here. You are going to slide this T holder from the bottom like that, and it's going to hold over there, and just keep that there. And we are going to use one more T holder, and we are going to be fixing our battery operated motor in place like this. So to do that, you are going to take next T holder. You are going to take a medium sized screw in your kit, not the longest screw, the medium sized screw. You are going to take that, you are going to put it through the top of the T holder like that. Now take your battery, make sure the alignment is correct, and then fix this through the top hole of your battery operated motor like this, like that. And now this screw has to go through this hole that's there on this T holder. So just put it in like that. Make sure that outer slit has locked in with this T shape of this T holder, and now that is holding like that. Take a nut, as you can see how the screw is sticking out here. So just take a nut, just put it in there and rotate it a little bit, and that's reasonably tight. So next you are going to take one more medium sized screw, put it through this second hole that you can see here. You will also see it sticking out on this side like that. Take a nut, just hold it in place like that over there. Take your screwdriver and tighten. And with that, you really want to make sure the screwdriver is sticking out. Hold it in place nicely, tighten with your screwdriver. And with that, you've pretty much tightened your BO motor. So that's fixed in place, and you're going to do the same thing on this side with the other battery operated motor. So now we've got both our battery operated motors fixed in place, as you can see here. And once again, you want to check the alignment, make sure it's correct. The front of the motors are facing this way, the opposite direction of where the caster wheel has been placed, and these two rotors are sticking out. And also make sure that you've inserted the screws from outside towards the inside. So now that's done. We've got our battery operated motors in place. So for our next step, we are going to be fixing our battery. This is the 8 volt 1 ampere hour battery that we will be using to power our robot. So to place our battery, well, it's going to come in between these 4 holes that you can see here around the caster wheel, these 4 holes in a rectangular shape. So you're going to place your battery like that, on preferably this way so that the wire is on the top. Place it like that, and now you're going to take this rectangular shaped holder that you have in your kit. it has two holes at the extreme ends, as you can see. So you're going to place this over the battery, and you're going to place it in such a way that these two holes are exactly parallel to the two holes that are there on your base. So once you put your holder like this, your battery is in place and you've got your holder exactly parallel to those two holes, you're going to take the largest screw in your kit, put it through this hole that's there on the holder. If this screw doesn't fit, just take another one of the largest screws and just push it right through that one, as well as through the hole that's there on the base of your robot. Do that. Then similarly, take another one of the longest screws, push it through that as well as through the hole at the very base, and now you can see that your battery is kind of locked in place like that, but it's still wobbling. So to fix it properly, what we can do is just hold this in place like that and take a nut and just put it there where the screw is sticking out and tighten it like that. And similarly, take one more nut. You can see the screw sticking out here. Just put it there and tighten it in place. And you're going to do the same thing with the next holder, which you're going to put over here, and you're going to put two of the larger screws through here as well, the same thing that you did here. So now that we've put up two holders that's supposed to hold our battery in place, as you can see our battery is firm, it's fixed in place. So now let's move on to the next part, which is going to be just fixing our wheels to the two battery operated motors that we have here. So to fix the wheels, once again you want to make sure that you don't just push the wheel in there into that rotor, but you want to look at the wheel and you will observe that there's actually a rectangular shaped kind of slit on the wheel, and you'll also observe that there's a rectangular shape on this rotor of your BO motor as well. So when you put it in, you want to make sure that you align the rectangular shapes perfectly and just slide it in like that, and do the same with the other wheel. So now that we've fixed our wheels onto our motors and we've got all this in place, we're pretty much done with the lower part, or rather what we're going to be doing on the base of our robot is pretty much done. So now we're going to move on to what we'll be doing with the top part. So we'll just move this aside for now. This is going to be the top part of our robot, and what you want to note here is that the part that has www.CIRRD.com will be the back portion of our robot. So now that we've decided on that, we'll be putting our spacers onto this so that it can later hold our development board. So take the 4 small spacers that you have in your kit, and you're going to be placing them over the holes that you see here like that. That is the 4 holes surrounding this little rectangle at the back. So it's going to look like that, like I said before. So let's fix it in place. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a small screw, you're going to slide it through like that, take a spacer, just put it on like that, screw it in place, take one more screw like that, put a spacer, screw it in place, take your next screw, put it through this hole at the back, take your spacer, screw it in place, and last one more screw, the small screw, put it through this hole and just screw your spacer in place. And with that, you've got all your 4 small spacers fixed in place. So now that we've got our 4 small spacers in place, for our next part we are going to fix our servo motor. So this is our servo motor and it's going to be placed here in between this rectangular slit at the very front of our chassis. So you can notice that there are 2 protrusions that are sticking out from our servo motor, and there's 2 holes on those protrusions as well, and you'll also notice that there are 2 holes on either end of this rectangular hole. So you're going to take your servo motor and slide it through like that and hold it in place in such a way that this white part, the rotor, is facing towards the front side of your robot and not the back. So it's going to fit in place just like this. And now next what you want to notice is that you have 3 screws in your kit specifically for the servo motor. They're small screws and they're different from the other nuts and bolts that you got in your packet. You've got these 3 specific screws just to fix your servo motor in place. And what you're going to do is you're going to take 2 of the bigger screws out of the 3. There are 2 that are slightly bigger. You're going to take those and you're going to use those to screw your servo motor in place. So you're going to put it right there once you've made sure that the holes are aligned. Take a star screwdriver and just screw it in place like that. Now do the same thing in the front. Take the bigger screw, put it through like that. Just screw it in place. Yeah, like that, pretty much tight. So now as you can see, we've screwed our servo motor in place with both these screws and it's nice and firm. So for our next step, we are going to place this, which is the top part of our chassis, on top of the bottom part of our robot, which we'd already fixed earlier, the part with the motor and the wheels. But before we do that, you're going to take your ultrasonic sensor over here, and as you can observe, there are these 2 rectangular shaped holes on the center, on the top part, these 2 right here. And this is to take the wires of our ultrasonic sensor through them. So what I mean is you're going to take this wire of your ultrasonic sensor and from the top to the bottom, remember, not the other way around, from top to bottom, you're going to take it through this first hole near the servo motor like that. Just pull it through underneath, and now remember, from bottom to top through this hole you're going to take out that same wire like that, and now you've taken your ultrasonic sensor's wires through those 2 rectangular holes. So now that you've got this like that, you've got your wire coming out of the servo motor, as you can see. Now this also you're going to take it from bottom to top through this rectangular hole here like this, and pull it out, and you've got both your wires coming out. So now, as we said before, we're going to place this on top of the bottom part. So let's bring back the base portion of our robot, and as you can already see, we've already kept 4 spacers on that base part so that this can rest on top. So just place this on top like that, and wait, before you do that, you would also notice that you've got your wires coming from the motors and the wire coming from your battery. So you, similar to what you did with the other wires, you're going to take all these wires through this little rectangular hole at the back part of the top. So take one wire from your motor and slide it from bottom to top. Take the next wire from bottom to top, and lastly the wire from your battery from bottom to top. Now you've got all your wires neatly coming out. So now we are going to rest this top part on the 4 spacers that we put in place before, like this. As you can see, your top part has 4 holes at the very corners, just like the bottom part. So you are going to align the hole and the spacer. You are going to take a small screw, you are just going to put that through there. Just make sure that you have got the alignment right on any one side first. Just put it there, take your screwdriver, and screw it in place like that. And you are going to do the same thing with 3 more screws on all these 3 holes over here. So now that we have got these 4 screws in place and we have fixed the top part of our robot to the spacers that were at the bottom and it is rigid, for our next step we are going to put our development board on top of these 4 spacers that you see here. So to do that, first we are going to take our development board, and what you want to do, just to make it simple, it is not a necessity but it is better just to make it look a lot less messy, is you want to take all the wires except for the wire from the battery, that you are going to just leave it here in between these spacers, and the remaining wires just take them out through this side. Now take your development board, place it on top of the 4 spacers like that. You want to make sure, and you will also notice that you have got these 4 holes on your development board at each corner. So those holes have to be directly above each of the holes on the spacers. So essentially you are going to place your development board like this, with the battery part sticking out on the left, that is over here, that you can see the battery. This is where your battery input is going to be. So that part is facing this side, your microcontroller is facing this way. This alignment will make it a little easier to connect your wires later on. So you have got all your ports here, as you can see, and the wires are coming out in that direction. So now that you have aligned your development board properly, take a small screw that you have in your kit, just put it through the hole and the spacer, take your screwdriver and just screw it in place. So that is one. Take another small screwdriver, just do the same thing. It is good to screw them diagonally first because it will help hold your development board in place. And you are just going to do the same thing with that last hole over there. Take a small screw, take your screwdriver, and just screw it in place. And with that, you have got your development board fixed in place on top of your small spacers. So now that we have fixed our development board in place with our 4 screws, and you can see that our development board is firm on top, for our next step we are going to take all our wires that are coming out from our 2 battery operated motors, from our ultrasonic sensor, from our servo motor, as well as from our battery, and we are going to give them all to the corresponding places on our development board. So first let us start with the wire that has 4 spots for pins, that is, that can connect to 4 pins. This is coming from your ultrasonic sensor. And on your development board, you will notice that there is a port dedicated for your ultrasonic sensor. So, you are going to take this and you are just going to slide it in the way it fits. This, as you know, again once again I repeat, is the wire from the ultrasonic sensor, which has 4 slots for 4 pins. You are going to take that and just put it on the port that has 4 pins, which is for your ultrasonic sensor. Next, let us take the wire that has 3 pins. As you can notice, this is going to fit into a port where there are 3 pins. This is the wire coming from the servo motor. So, now you are going to take this wire and you are going to connect it on the port on your development board for your servo motor, which is these 3 over here. So, we are going to connect the wires from our servo motor to these 3 pins, which is for our servo motor. But what you first want to notice is that there are 3 different colored wires coming here. So, the red wire is actually your VCC and this orange wire is actually your data wire and the brown one is ground. So, when you connect it to these 3 pins here, you want to make sure that you have connected it accordingly. You can see that there is a marking on your development board just above each pin, ground, VCC and the pin for your data from the servo motor. So, when you connect it, you want to make sure that the orange wire, that port is going to come straight into the pin corresponding to your data. The red obviously is in the middle, so that is your VCC, and this brown wire for ground has to correspond with the pin for ground in that port. So, make sure you watch for that and just connect it to those 3 pins. Now, next we have got our 2 wires from our 2 battery operated motors. So, first we are going to take the wire coming from our right battery operated motor and we are going to give it to, well, first of all you will notice that we have got 4 ports here for our motors, and that is in case you want to use 4 battery operated motors, but in this case we are only using 2, but the idea is that you are always free to use 4 supposing you want to, but for our project we are just going to use 2. So, you will notice that there are 2 ports marked as motor A and 2 ports marked as motor B. So, motor A corresponds to the motors on the right and motor B corresponds to the motors on the left. So, first you are going to take a wire from your motor from the right side, that is your BO motor on the right side, find the wire coming from there and you are going to give that to any of the ports marked as motor A, like that. And similarly, take your wire, identify it as the wire from the motor on the left side and give that to any port that says motor B. And now the only wire left is the wire from your battery. From your battery you have got this red wire and this black wire. Now, for those of you who do not know, red is positive and black is negative, and the wire from our battery is going to go right here on our development board, because this is where the supply from the battery is given. So, first you will notice that there are 2 screws here. So, you are going to take your screwdriver and you are just going to loosen those screws till they just come up a little. Do the same thing with the next screw, and now what you want to identify is that there is a marking here for V in and ground, which means that when you connect the wires from your battery, the positive wire has to go into the part marked as V in and the black wire will go to the part marked as ground. Just give your red wire in there. take your screwdriver and tighten it. Similarly, loosen the screw here, take your black wire and make sure you are giving it to the part that is marked as ground. Now when you connect that, you might notice that your robot is starting to work. This is because at the moment this switch is on. So if you take a look at your development board, you can see this transparent LED here, and you can see this little black cap like thing right next to the voltage regulator. This is the switch. So what you can do is you can actually pull this cap off like that, and you can see the two pins underneath. So while this is pulled off, your robot is off. So you want to do that first. Put this aside, and now take your black wire and just connect it back to ground. Just put it in there, take your screwdriver and tighten it. And right now your robot's off. You want to remember that when you want to turn it back on, you have to put the switch back on. So we've got that part of the connecting wires done. So now that we've connected all the wires to our development board, we're almost done. But now for the next part, before we can proceed with our assembly, we actually need to set our servo motor to a certain point. That is, this rotor here has to be fixed at its origin, and we can't do that physically, or rather we can, but it will never be accurate. To accurately get it to the starting position that we need, we'll need to use the programming onto our microcontroller. So before we proceed with the next step in the assembly, what you want to remember is that we are now actually going to move on to the programming, and once you are done with the programming section on your development board, you will have set your servo motor to the correct position, starting position that it needs to be at. So remember that after this, you are going to first move on to programming, and when you are done with that, now you are going to come back to the final stage in the assembly. So now that you have done your programming and your servo motor has been set to the correct original position, we are going to take this part which belongs to our servo motor, and we are going to fix it like that. You want to make sure it's pointing in this direction like this, and once you've done that, you're going to take this thing in your kit, which is the holder for your ultrasonic sensor. And as you can see, it's got two holes in your ultrasonic sensors. Microphone is going to fit right through it like that. You've got both these protrusions fitting right through like that perfectly, and you'll also notice that there's a hole at the bottom over here. So now what you're going to do is you're going to, well, you know how that fits in. So first you're going to take this, and you can see there's a little slot here, there's a hole here, and there's a hole here at the base of this holder. So you're going to align those holes like that. If you can't see it, you're going to align those holes like that. You're going to take that smallest screw which we discussed. We had 3 screws for our servo motor. You're going to take that smallest screw and you're going to put it right through both these, and now you're going to take your star screwdriver and just screw it in place nice and tight. So that's fixed in place, and now you're just going to take your ultrasonic sensor and fix it through like that. And with this, the assembly of your obstacle avoiding robot is complete.